My name is Bella, known across the internet as the ultimate money-saving blogger. And my life motto is just 6 words. 50% off. If you don't grab it, you're losing money. When the supermarket broadcast announced a store-wide 50% discount on the last day, the shout barely reached my ears before I clutched my notebook, filled with discount information, and sprinted toward the supermarket, piling my cart higher than Black Friday delivery boxes, not even sparing the bottom shelf $0.7 sausages, because to me, saving $1 is no different from earning $1. Welcome to Panda Storyboard. Put on your headphones, get cozy, and settle in. Let's enjoy this story together. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like. Now, let's begin. I was rummaging at the promotion stand for the last 2 bags of cucumber-flavored chicks when a sudden scream exploded behind us. And the next second, I was nearly scared out of my wits by the onrushing stench of zombies. The instinct of a money-saving blogger instantly switched into survival mode, and I hauled my shopping cart parkour-style through the aisles, stuffing chips into my arms as I ran, even yelling at the mutated fitness trainer chasing after me, "Bro, your morning run speed has gotten slower again," before crashing through the basement door, only then realizing that I hadn't come to grab discounts at all, but had accidentally barged into an apocalypse dungeon. The story officially begins. Make way, make way. I'm Bella, 28 years old, an ordinary office worker, currently weaving through crowded aisles with the posture of an Olympic racewalker. My cart already stacked with instant noodles, sausages, and toilet paper, a standard apocalypse stockpile, even though I originally just wanted to save some takeout money. The scanning sound at the first checkout counter was heavenly to my ears, with only one elderly lady left ahead of me. Victory at checkout just within reach, when the cashier mechanically announced $356, his complexion looking terribly off, bloodshot veins crawling through the whites of his eyes. As the old lady slowly fumbled for her wallet, the young cashier suddenly started coughing violently, and when she asked with concern if he was all right, he abruptly looked up, black liquid dripping from the corners of his mouth, his eyeballs instantly turning a murky gray-white, before he lunged straight for her neck, letting out a sound no human could ever make. My body reacted before my brain, and years of playing Resident Evil and The Last of Us made me instantly understand what was happening. So I turned and bolted for the supermarket exit, but not before doing 3 things. First, yanking the gum rack beside the register and smashing it hard at the pursuing cashier. Second, grabbing my already scanned shopping cart, since it contained my life-saving supplies. And third, sweeping all the remaining chips from the promotion stand into my arms, because even in the apocalypse, snacks are non-negotiable. The supermarket had already descended into total chaos, and amid the screams, at least 3 customers were twisting and mutating, their movements stiff, yet terrifyingly fast, like broken marionettes, and I cursed under my breath as I pushed the cart at full speed, the wheels screeching across slime-smeared floors. The parking lot had become a living hell, but I had no time to look, because my electric scooter was parked 50 meters away, and every step of those 50 meters was a race against death, with a zombie in a suit suddenly pouncing at me, prompting me to shove the cart forward reflexively and knock it over before jumping onto my scooter, tying the cart to the back seat, stuffing the front basket full of chips, and twisting the throttle all the way. The ride home normally took 10 minutes, but that day, those 10 minutes felt like a lifetime, with wrecked cars and screaming crowds everywhere and sirens blaring nonstop. And although I saw a mother running frantically with her child while 3 zombies chased behind her, I didn't dare slow down, because I could barely save myself, let alone anyone else. When I reached the neighborhood gate, Mr. Parker the guard greeted me with a smile that froze instantly as a blood-mouthed young man bit into his neck, and I smashed through the barrier and charged inside, racing for the basement of Building 7, my rented room, dragging the cart down the stairs as heavy footsteps thundered behind me. It was Ethan from across the hall, or rather what used to be Ethan, half his face mangled and his throat emitting hoarse gurgles as he lunged at me. And in the split second before disaster, I grabbed a mop from the stairwell, wedged the handle against his neck, used vague memories from judo videos to slam him onto the stairs, then kicked him away hard before slamming the basement door shut behind me, all 3 locks clicking into place. I slid down against the door, listening to the pounding outside, my heart hammering like it was about to burst from my chest as I panted like a dehydrated dog. Yet my mind was strangely clear, and only after 10 minutes did the impacts finally stop. Creeping to the door, I peered through the peephole and saw Ethan still wandering in the stairwell, twitching now and then. And only then did I have the mental space to inspect my apocalypse fortress. A 20-square-meter basement with a single door, a small barred window, a bed, desk, mini-fridge, induction cooker, and thankfully, an independent bathroom. All right, Bella, time to take inventory, I told myself, counting 3 boxes of instant noodles, stacks of sausages, 10 packs of compressed biscuits, 5 bags of chips, half a case of bottled water, leftover beer from last week's gathering, a bag of rice, some dried vegetables, eggs, milk, and frozen food in the fridge, along with fully charged phones, 3 power banks, a laptop, a switch, a small speaker, a medical kit, a toolbox, several books, and my basement survival guide, which I owned simply because I like to prepare for the worst. The tap still ran with water, the lights turned on, my phone had full signal though the network lagged, and trending alerts screamed about sudden viral outbreaks and violent incidents, so I hung a model katana by my bed, within arm's reach, tore open a bag of chips, took the first bite, and officially began my apocalypse survival game. I tapped a neat cross on the floor with duct tape, admired it from 2 steps back, and noted that this was my 3rd day of self-isolation. Or more accurately, my 3rd day of scraping by among zombies, waking at 7 sharp to my alarm, leaping out of bed like during military training, pulling on a childish cartoon t-shirt, and starting my daily routine of observing enemy movements, checking defenses, and counting resources. Through the peephole, I observed zombie Ethan pacing the stairwell in irregular circles at roughly half a meter per second, dutifully recording it in my self-invented zombie observation journal, inspecting every corner of the basement for weak points, even sealing the bathroom drain with magazines just in case, purifying water with makeshift methods, and scrolling through emergency alerts until the signal abruptly died, leaving the last message frozen on a blood-smeared door with a plea for help. I turned off my phone and stuffed it into the fridge to preserve battery life, made myself a luxury apocalypse breakfast of noodles and sausage, muffled the induction cooker under blankets, listened to screams and impacts from upstairs through a glass pressed to the wall, discovered a hidden storage room containing a sheathed katana and a handwritten survival guide left by a previous tenant, and spent the day reorganizing my fortress, ending the night by writing in my notebook. Day 3 alive, zombies +3, weapons +1, hope +10. That night I dreamed of ruling the zombie world until a scratching sound woke me, only for me to discover it was the neighborhood stray cat Mr. Pepper pawing at my door, forcing me to choose between reason and compassion, finally feeding it sausage through the window bars and watching it linger outside in the moonlight before I pulled the curtain almost all the way shut. In the end, he jumped onto a nearby pipeline and disappeared, and I let out a long breath. But when I went back to bed, I couldn't fall asleep again. My stomach started growling, and I realized I was hungry, and when I opened the fridge, I discovered that my supplies were being consumed much faster than I had imagined. At this rate, I could last at most another 2 weeks, so rationing was unavoidable. I scratched my head, my gaze landing on the dartboard hanging on the wall, a stress relief toy from before the apocalypse. And inspiration struck me like lightning, because 10 minutes later, the apocalypse roulette was born. It was an A4 sheet, printed with various food combinations and pasted onto the dartboard, ranging from luxury sets like half a pack of instant noodles and half a sausage, to basic options like 2 spoonfuls of rice with dehydrated vegetables, and even extreme choices like air dinner or spiritual nourishment. So I decided to leave it to fate. Standing 3 meters away, I closed my eyes and threw the dart, which landed squarely on half a bag of potato chips, unlimited tap water refills. And I pursed my lips and thought, well, that works too. I broke off half a chip and let it slowly melt in my mouth, the taste reminding me of the comfort crackers my mother used to give me when I was sick as a child. When daylight came, I began my 4th day of survival routine, and zombie coach Ethan still went out for his run at exactly 7 o'clock, if pacing around the stairwell could be considered running. So I added a new note in my observation journal, suspecting that he retained some habits from before death. As I was writing, I suddenly noticed water seeping from the corner of the bathroom wall, a small stream of murky liquid trickling downward, and my heart sank because the pipe was leaking. But when I crouched down to smell it, there was no bleach scent, meaning it wasn't tap water. Tracing the trail upward, I discovered the source was a crack in the outer wall, likely caused by collisions during the earlier chaos, with rainwater slowly but steadily seeping in from there, and the word rainwater made my eyes light up. 2 hours later, a complete rainwater collection system appeared in the basement, with a row of containers lined up along the wall, topped with makeshift filters made from t-shirts, layered with cleaned sand, crushed charcoal, and toilet paper. And although it looked like a kindergarten craft project, the guide said it could filter out most impurities. I proudly bowed to my invention, the end-of-the-world water purifier patented by Bella. And after tasting the filtered water, I found it had a slight earthy flavor, but was far better than drinking rainwater directly. At noon, the Apocalypse Roulette gave me 1 spoon of rice, imaginary side dishes, and on a whim I used a desk lamp as a heat source to make dehydrated vegetables, spreading the last wilted greens on foil and baking them under the lamp. And 3 hours later, I obtained a few crisp, paper-like green pieces, which I chewed with my eyes closed, pretending I was eating French cuisine. The afternoon entertainment was the zombie reality show, where I named every zombie that passed by the window and invented stories for them. Like the aunt in high heels, who must have been an elegant lady in life, and still patrolled her territory daily, even after turning into a zombie. Or the upright uncle, who might have been a retired soldier, judging by his proper posture. These silly games somehow kept me marginally sane, or at least that's what I told myself. Toward evening, there was movement upstairs again, not screams this time, but rhythmic thudding sounds, like someone dragging heavy objects and using a glass as a stethoscope. I determined it was likely the zombie family in room 302, moving house, or just mindlessly bumping into furniture. Mr. Pepper appeared at the window right on time, and even brought a gift today, a dead rat. And suppressing my nausea, I accepted it through the bars using a plastic bag, and gave him double sausages in exchange, joking that next time he could maybe bring chocolate, though he ignored my humor and focused on licking his paws. Before bed, I checked the rainwater collector and found it had gathered about 500 milliliters of clean water, a great victory, so I carefully poured it into a washed mineral water bottle, labeled it Emergency Reserve, and was about to turn off the light when a faint cry for help drifted in through the window. "Is anyone there? Please save me. I'm in Building 3, a woman's voice pleaded intermittently, full of despair, and my hand instinctively reached for the window latch before snapping back. Rule of 5 of the Basement Survival Guide was circled in red. Do not respond to any calls for help, as they may be traps or something worse. And I bit my lip and pulled the curtain shut, but the voice continued, begging and mentioning a 5-year-old daughter, making my heart pound wildly in my chest. I grabbed 2 pillows and pressed them over my head, but the sound still seeped through, until the cries gradually faded and were replaced by low roars and chaotic footsteps. With trembling hands I wrote in my notebook, A4, rainwater collection successful, heard human distress call, did not respond, then crossed out the last line and collapsed onto the bed. For the first time in a long while, I cried, not sobbing loudly, but silently, tears that wouldn't stop, for the possibly real 5-year-old girl, for myself, and for this insane world, until Mr. Pepper let out a soft meow outside the window, as if comforting me. I wiped my tears, hugged the katana beside my pillow like a comfort toy, and told myself that tomorrow would be another day, if I was lucky, though luck now depended entirely on my ridiculous apocalypse roulette. The katana flashed silver through the air, and chopped hard into the neck of the zombie dummy drawn on the wall, and I looked with satisfaction at the crooked graffiti, its neck already covered in more than a dozen cuts, recording the 13th successful headshot in my notebook.
The basement was stuffy like a steamer, but I insisted on training for an hour every day.
And although the katana left by the previous tenant wasn't sharpened, it was heavy enough to swing with force, following the 3-day crash course sword techniques from the Survival Guide Appendix, because the guide said that when facing zombies, you weren't fighting, just chopping walking pumpkins. My pumpkin was a mannequin once used to hang skirts, but imagining it as a real zombie made me more motivated, especially after I drew Coach Ethan's face on it in revenge for how he used to mock me for being a homebody. After training, I checked my food supplies and found bad news, as the last 2 eggs had gone rotten, but the good news was that the instant noodles were still edible, though some seasoning packets were swollen like balloons. It was apocalypse roulette time again, and standing 3 meters away with my eyes closed I threw the dart, only to land on half a pack of biscuits, imagination, making me mutter that the system was targeting me. As I ate the softened biscuits and checked the rainwater system, which had collected about 2 liters over the past 3 days, crystal clear after filtration. Outside the window, my zombie reality show continued, and I whispered in a mock documentary narration voice, introducing tonight's protagonist, one-armed uncle, a zombie with only his right arm, who was circling the same trash can repeatedly and occasionally letting out low roars, until a rival, suit guy, staggered into view, and the two began competing for the trash can, a scene far more entertaining than pre-apocalypse television. The show was interrupted by Mr. Pepper, who arrived empty-handed and unusually agitated, pacing the windowsill with his tail puffed up like a feather duster, refusing even the sausage I offered, before suddenly perking up his ears toward the east side of the complex, and leaping off out of sight. Sensing something was wrong, I left a narrow gap in the curtain to observe, and 10 minutes later 3 living people appeared, wearing sportswear, carrying hiking backpacks, and holding fire axes, clearly a survivor team, making my fingers dig into the window frame as I debated whether to signal them, until Rule 5 echoed again in my head, and I decided not to risk it. One of them suddenly turned in my direction as if sensing my gaze, and I quickly pulled the curtain tight and held my breath. And when I peeked again a minute later, they were gone. So I wrote in my notebook, Day 11, spotted 3-person survivor team heading east, well-equipped, best avoided. Hungry again, I decided to try the previous tenant's ultimate survival tip, sprouting mung beans, and after finding half a bag of old beans, I soaked them and spread them on a damp towel in a dark corner, theoretically allowing me to eat fresh sprouts in 3 days, announcing myself as Apocalypse Farmer Bella before realizing I hadn't spoken to another human in 11 days, and that the loneliness hurt more than hunger. While flipping through old photos on my phone, even annoying relatives felt precious, until a faint sound from the bathroom made me grab the katana, only to realize the rainwater container had overflowed, and while relieved, I noticed mold beginning to grow in the basement, prompting a thorough bleach cleanup and the creation of a makeshift clean zone. That night, another clear cry for help came from upstairs, a young woman claiming to be Mrs. Wilson's daughter, from room 302, begging for food and help for her injured mother, sounding heartbreakingly real. But after agonizing hesitation, I still didn't respond, later writing and then crossing out notes in my notebook, aware with horror that I was starting to adapt to the apocalypse. Just then, Mr. Pepper returned carrying not a mouse, but an unopened pack of instant noodles, and I nearly cried with joy as I rewarded him with double sausages and decided to save the noodles as a celebration meal, because this small miracle felt more precious than any Michelin feast.
Before sleep,
I checked the mung beans and found tiny white sprouts emerging, and I whispered that life always finds a way, unsure whether I was quoting Jurassic Park or the Survival Guide, then resolved to record all human activity from now on, not to join them, but to avoid them, because in this world, loneliness might be the safest way to survive. 6 complete tally marks on the wall represented 30 days, a full month of survival in this 20-square-meter basement, and I applauded myself, raising a glass filled with filtered rainwater in a silent toast to the survivor. The water tasting faintly of bleach. Flavor no longer mattered, because who cared anymore? I was alive. I hadn't turned into a zombie. I hadn't starved to death. I hadn't gone insane from loneliness, at least not completely yet. To celebrate this milestone, I decided to give myself a holiday. No training, no zombie observation, no survival experiments. Just a full day of rest, though rest in the apocalypse had a somewhat special definition. My holiday activities included, first, indoor golf, using a broom handle as a club, bottle caps as balls, rolled up socks as holes, with the uneven basement tiles adding extra difficulty. Second, a zombie graffiti art exhibition, drawing even more zombie figures on the walls, including portraits of Suit Guy and High Heels Auntie. Third, Apocalypse Voice, using the last 5% of my phone battery to play My Motherland and humming along with the melody. Just as I was immersed in the holiday atmosphere, Mr. Pepper suddenly let out a warning hiss outside the window, and I immediately quieted down, tiptoed over, and peeked outside. In the open space of the residential complex, a brutal chase was unfolding. The 3 well-equipped survivors team being pursued by at least 10 zombies, swinging their weapons as they ran. But there were simply too many zombies. Run! Run faster! I subconsciously whispered, and then one of them fell and was instantly swallowed by the zombies, his screams tearing through the air. The other two didn't look back and continued fleeing, while the zombies split into two groups, one stopping to eat, and the other continuing the chase. The two survivors turned past Building 7 and disappeared from view, and a few seconds later, there was a piercing metallic crash, followed by even more roars. I counted to 100 and never saw another human appear, only a few blood-covered zombies slowly wandering back to join the feast. My stomach cramped, and I retched a few times, but there was nothing to vomit. This was the first time I had witnessed humans being eaten alive by zombies with my own eyes, and scenes from games and movies couldn't come close to the terror of reality. Steaming organs, splattering blood, the sound of flesh being torn apart. I finally threw up a little sour liquid, while Mr. Pepper looked at me worriedly and let out a soft meow. I mechanically stuffed a piece of sausage into his mouth and slumped onto the floor, as Rule 7 of the Basement Survival Guide surfaced in my mind. When you see others die, remember two things. First, it's not your fault. Second, it's cruel but real. Those three people were better equipped than me, stronger than me, and more numerous than me. Yet they were dead, or about to be, while I was hiding in a basement, and still alive. And surviving was victory, I told myself. To distract myself, I checked the bean sprout project, and found a bumper harvest. Dense white sprouts, like a miniature forest. And following the guide, I carefully harvested half, and left the rest to keep growing. Dinner was a deluxe version of bean sprout instant noodles with a slice of sausage, and I chewed each bite like a connoisseur, letting it linger on my tongue. Halfway through the meal, my nose suddenly grew warm and started bleeding, and I panicked, stuffing tissues into my nostrils and tilting my head back, thinking it might be dry air, or vitamin deficiency, or something worse. The guide mentioned scurvy, but I refused to think in that direction, and after lying down for 10 minutes the bleeding stopped. So I decided to increase tomorrow's water ration by 50% to prevent dehydration. As night fell, I began a new nightly ritual of recording zombie behavior patterns, and my month-long observations showed that zombie activity decreased at night, especially during full moons, and tonight happened to be one. Through the window crack, I saw that the zombies were indeed quieter than usual. Coach Ethan no longer pacing at the stairwell, but leaning against the wall as if dozing, while High Heels Auntie sat on a bench with her head tilted toward the moon, and if you didn't know she was a zombie, the scene was almost poetic, making me wonder if they missed home too. Suddenly, a shrill electronic sound shattered the night's silence. Attention, this is the rescue team. All survivors please gather in front of Building 7. Repeated through the community broadcast system. Broken, but clear. Rescue. I nearly jumped off the bed, my heart racing, but reason quickly overpowered excitement. Because the broadcast said to gather in front of Building 7, which was exactly my building. And why here? Why now? After a full month? Why suddenly rescue? I pressed against the window to observe as the broadcast repeated 3 times, and the zombies in the complex began to stir and move toward the sound source. A few minutes later, a uniformed figure appeared in the open space, holding a loudspeaker, calling for survivors to come out, and saying they had food and medical aid. His voice unnaturally clear, almost performative, and his uniform didn't quite fit. I narrowed my eyes and noticed a distinct bite mark on his right wrist, wrapped in bandages but seeping black blood, a zombie blood trap, and my lips pressed tight as I realized this wasn't rescue, but hunting. The broadcast sounded twice more and then stopped, and the uniformed rescuer waited for 10 minutes, and when no one came out, he suddenly kicked over a trash can in rage and cursed. I shrank back behind the curtain, hands and feet icy cold, wondering what their purpose was. Food, slaves, or something even more terrifying. And no matter the answer, I was grateful I hadn't fallen for it. Because in the apocalypse, the most dangerous things weren't just zombies, but living people. I heavily wrote Day 30 in my notebook. Fake rescue alert. Remember, don't respond, don't trust, don't take risks. After lying down, staring at the ceiling, I suddenly realized a question. If even rescue couldn't be trusted, what could I still hope for, hiding in the basement forever? Mr. Pepper lightly jumped onto the windowsill with a small packet of biscuits in his mouth, and I almost kissed him, carefully taking the spoils and finding the packaging old but intact, with 3 months left before expiration. Where did you dig these up from? Some interdimensional pocket? I scratched his chin, and he purred contentedly. Before sleep, My last task was checking air quality, since breathing had felt a bit labored these days and mold might be back. So I soaked sponges in diluted bleach and hung them in the four corners as makeshift air purifiers, and the guide's little tricks worked once again. "Good night, Apocalypse World," I said to the darkness with a self-mocking smile. I'm already used to saying good night to the air. Is this a sign of impending dissociation? Before closing my eyes, I thought of the fake rescuer again, wondering whether he knew there were survivors here, whether Building 7 was chosen at random or targeted. And the thought kept me tossing for a long time before sleep finally came, with dreams filled with endlessly repeating broadcast voices, and every peek outside revealing a blood-filled maw. They used fake rescue broadcasts to lure survivors into showing themselves and then robbed them of everything. And I huddled behind the curtains trembling, feeling fear and anger mixed with a trace of shameful relief that at least I had not fallen for it. The looters left with their spoils, leaving bodies behind to stiffen gradually under the sunlight. And a few hours later, the zombies would come to clean up the scene in their own way. Day 38. Confirmed the fake rescue team were looters in room 302. No knocking sounds heard anymore. My notes were messier than usual. Food supplies were critical. Tomorrow, I must activate the cockroach farm. When I reached this point, I paused for a moment and added a postscript. Coach Ethan was looking at my window again today. I do not like this kind of attention. Mr. Pepper did not bring back a gift today. He was just restless and anxious. I gave him double the ham sausages, but he only ate half and then stopped, his ears constantly swiveling, as if listening to sounds I could not hear. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked softly, my fingers combing through the fur on his neck. And Mr. Pepper suddenly lifted his head and looked toward the garage area in the northwest of the complex. A low rumble coming from his throat, sounding like a warning, and also like fear. We narrowed our eyes and looked in that direction, but apart from a few wrecked cars and wandering zombies, we found nothing unusual. "Whatever it is, stay away," I muttered instinctively in English, as if that would add power to the spell. While checking food supplies before bed, a terrifying reality hit me. Even counting the cockroach farm, I could last at most 2 more weeks. And then what? Eat the wall plaster? I stared at the tally marks on the wall, and suddenly realized that the art of barely surviving was not just about avoiding danger. Sometimes you had to actively seek a way to live, and that way might lie with the zombie who had been paying attention to me all along. When the broadcast sounded for the 3rd time, I was already prepared. "All survivors, attention please. The rescue team will arrive at the front of Building 7 at 2 p.m. today. Please bring necessary items and prepare to relocate." The same lines, the same pauses, and I pressed myself against the window, watching the uniformed man perform in the open space, while his accomplices this time stood openly on both sides, holding various weapons. "No creativity at all," I muttered, as I adjusted my homemade binoculars. 2 old reading glasses taped together. The effect mediocre, but enough to see clearly that the rescue team had added 2 new members, a girl with green-dyed hair and a bald man built like a bear. They were fishing, and this time the fish took the bait. The window on the 3rd floor of Building 5 opened again. Not the middle-aged man from last time, but a young girl, her voice trembling but clear, as she asked whether they could really take them away, saying her father was injured and needed a doctor. The uniformed man immediately put on a professional expression and said, "Of course, comrade. We have medical equipment and passes to the safe zone." A clumsy lie. Safe zone passes. This is not a zombie movie, but desperate people will believe any hope. The girl hesitated, then withdrew her head, and a few minutes later she appeared at the building entrance, supporting a middle-aged man with his leg bandaged. The same idiot as last time. They limped toward the rescue team, their backpacks bulging, and I bit my lip, my fingers unconsciously digging into my thigh, wondering whether I should warn them by knocking on the window or throwing something. Rule 5 of the Basement Survival Guide flashed through my mind. Do not respond. But this time I had added a sentence after Rule 5 in red pen. Unless the cost is bearable. What cost is bearable? I had not yet figured it out when the tragedy had already unfolded. Just like last time, when the father and daughter drew near, the ambushing looters swarmed them. But this time, the girl pulled a small knife from her pocket, only for the bald man to easily knock it away and slap her. The sound so crisp, I could hear it even from a distance. "No," I cried out involuntarily, and immediately covered my mouth. Mr. Pepper's fur bristled on the windowsill as he let out a low hiss. The bald man rummaged through their backpack, pulling out canned food, medicine, and a few bottles of water. while the uniformed man held a knife to the middle-aged man's throat and questioned him. And even from far away, I could tell he was asking where there were others and where more supplies were. The man shook his head, and then I closed my eyes. But the screams still pierced my ears, and when I opened them again, the girl was clutching her father and screaming as the looters left with their spoils, not even bothering to kill her, perhaps thinking the zombies would do it for them. The cruel wisdom was that the girl's cries soon attracted the first zombies, including the woman in high heels, and they staggered toward this fresh prey. What should I do? Rescue would be suicidal. Not rescue would mean watching a living person die. When the girl suddenly stopped crying, looked up at the approaching zombies, and then made an unexpected move by pulling something from her father's pocket and stuffing it into her own, before running away. Not in blind panic, but with direction and strategy. Straight toward Building 6. Most of the zombies were drawn to the bodies on the ground. Only 2 chased after her, and I whispered praise. Smart, grieving but rational. Someone who could survive the apocalypse. The looters left in the opposite direction, toward the east gate of the complex, and I let out a breath, about to step away from the window, when I saw the uniformed man stop, bend down, and pick something up. My zombie observation journal. It must have fallen out yesterday while I was observing, and I felt as if I had plunged into ice, because the journal contained all my records, zombie behavior patterns, weakness analyses, and my hiding place. The uniformed man flipped through the notebook, then suddenly looked up, his gaze stabbing straight toward my window, and even at a distance, I could feel the cold smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Damn it. I slid down to the floor, my mind racing as I wondered whether they would come, when they would come, and how many of them there were, while Mr. Pepper rubbed anxiously against my legs, and I mechanically stroked his head. Run. Outside was full of zombies. Fight head-on. 7 armed men against 1 homebody was 0 chance, unless I used the power of the zombies themselves. A crazy plan took shape in my mind. Dangerous and unreliable, but better than waiting to die. I acted immediately, pulling out every usable tool, rope, empty cans, scissors, and paint left by the previous tenant. And 2 hours later, a simple yet ingenious trap system was ready. Half-snare rope set in the hallway, connected to a string of empty cans, a bedsheet with help written in red paint hanging from the window to pretend there were survivors, and most importantly, a device that could produce a huge noise by stuffing my phone into a metal pot and setting the alarm to go off in 2 hours. The final and most crucial step was scent camouflage. Using a month-old unwashed sock, rotten vegetable leaves, and a bit of my own blood pricked from my finger, made into small packets to throw at the looters at the critical moment. All right, Mr. Pepper, I said to the cat on the windowsill, today you have to sleep somewhere else. And he seemed to understand, letting out a soft meow before jumping away. I closed the window, drew the curtains, leaving only an almost invisible slit to observe outside, and waiting was the hardest part, as I checked the traps 3 times, practiced drawing my knife 5 times, and went to the bathroom 8 times, despite barely drinking water. At 4 in the afternoon, they came, not through the main gate, but 7 fully armed people climbing over the complex wall, carrying homemade spears, baseball bats, and even a hunting rifle, with the uniformed man, clearly the leader, holding my notebook and pointing at my window while saying something. I held my breath as I watched them split up, 3 going around to the back of the building, and 4 entering from the front, a perfect pincer. And the group of 4 quickly triggered the first trap, as the bald man tangled in the empty cans, the clatter exploding through the quiet complex like a bomb. He cursed and scanned the surroundings warily, but seeing no zombies, the uniformed man frowned at the cans and signaled them to continue. They reached my door and began whispering, and through the crack, I saw the bald man pull lock-picking tools from his backpack. Professionals. And my heart sank, because the lock would not hold long. Just then, my preset phone alarm went off, the metal pot amplifying it into an ear-splitting noise that echoed through the entire hallway, sending the looters into panic. And the effect was immediate, as distant groans, footsteps, collisions, and roars followed, zombies drawn by the sound. The uniformed man instantly realized it was a trap, and shouted orders to retreat, but it was too late, as the first zombies appeared at the stairwell, with Coach Ethan leading them. What followed was both terrifying and absurd, as the looters fled in chaos, and zombies poured out from every corner. the bald man swinging his bat and smashing a zombie's head, only to be surrounded by more, while the green-haired girl screamed as she was tackled by the woman in high heels. I should have felt victorious, but my stomach churned with nausea, because this was the first time I had actively caused others' deaths, even if they were evil. Suddenly there was a loud bang, and the door burst open, the uniformed man standing there with a feral grin, saying he had found me, little mouse, while I froze in place with the katana trembling in my hands, realizing he was taller than I remembered, and the madness in his eyes more terrifying than any zombie. "Smart trap," he said, shaking my notebook, "but not smart enough." And as he stepped forward and I backed up until my back hit the wall, he slowly pulled out a hunting knife and said he was going to enjoy the process. Then a body slammed into him from the side, smashing him into the wall, and it was Coach Ethan, the zombified fitness coach, pinning him down as he struggled in terror, the knife slashing Coach Ethan's arm and black blood spraying. Yet he showed no reaction, only lowering his head as the sound of a throat being bitten through rang out far more crisply than I had imagined. I collapsed to the floor, watching Coach Ethan, the neighbor who used to mock me for being a homebody, stand between me and the corpse, black blood dripping from his mouth, as he did not attack me, but simply stood there like a twisted guardian. The sounds of fighting outside gradually faded, and when I gathered the courage to peer through the door crack, all the looters were dead, some already turned into zombies and standing back up, with the bald man, now a bald zombie, spinning aimlessly. The crisis was over, but a new question emerged. Why had Coach Ethan protected me? I observed him carefully and noticed his eyes were clearer than other zombies, and his movements more coordinated. And when he turned to look at me, there was a fleeting moment when I seemed to see a familiar light, before it vanished, like a switch being turned off, and he returned to the blankness of a normal zombie, shuffling out the door to join the others. I immediately reinforced the door lock, checked all the traps, and then collapsed onto the bed, trembling all over, only realizing how close to death I had been once the adrenaline faded. Day 45. Repelled looters. Coach Ethan exhibited abnormal protective behavior. My notes were so shaky they were barely legible. The trap system was successful, but not reusable. The safe house was exposed, and an evacuation plan was needed. Mr. Pepper did not return until late at night, carrying a shallow wound and an unopened pack of biscuits, and I did not bother checking the loot, but cleaned his wound first. Thankfully, it was not deep, and I thanked him as I scratched behind his ears, and he purred contentedly. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I pondered the unavoidable question of why Coach Ethan had protected me, whether it was memory of past ties or something more complex. Because if it was the former, then zombies were more human than I thought, and if the latter, then my understanding of the apocalypse was far too shallow. Either way, one fact became clear. This basement was no longer safe, the looters might have accomplices, my traps were exposed, and it was time to consider moving. Before sleeping, my final task was to search the items left by the looters for anything useful, and through the window I hooked the bald man's backpack with a clothes pole, finding 2 bottles of water, a pack of compressed biscuits, a multifunction knife, and a map with several locations circled in red, including our complex, with last signal location of Subject 7, scrawled beside it. What was Subject 7? Some kind of weapon? A survivor number? Or a terrifying thought struck me. Could it refer to the previous tenant, or me? Mr. Pepper suddenly perked up and looked toward the northwest, something around the garage drawing his attention, and when I checked the map more closely, I saw a small question mark drawn at the garage location. I decided that tomorrow I would find out what that question mark meant. As the words, "From the basement to the farm, last signal location of Subject 7, looped in my mind all night. In the morning, I dragged myself up with dark circles under my eyes, and the first thing I did was check the map again, seeing it covered the entire city with 7 red circles marked with numbers, our complex being number 7 and labeled high-value target. High-value target is me, I muttered to Mr. Pepper. I cannot even afford to renew a gym membership. What kind of high-value target am I? And he busied himself licking his paws, completely uninterested in my identity crisis. Turning the map over, I found a faint note, almost rubbed away, that read, abnormal behavior, memory retention, possibly carrying antibodies. And that did not sound like an ordinary zombie apocalypse, but more like some kind of experiment. bringing a chilling association to mind as Coach Ethan's protective behavior, his special attention to me, and the looter's interest all seemed potentially connected. Day 46. The looter's map indicates that I may be Subject 7. I wrote a line in my notebook, then immediately crossed it out and changed it to Information source reliability needs verification, because reason told me I should not blindly trust a map of unknown origin, yet my intuition was screaming that this was important. A familiar rasping sound came from outside the window, and when I pulled the curtain open a crack, I saw Coach Ethan standing in his usual spot, looking up at my window. But unlike before, he was holding something in his hand. It was a filthy stuffed toy, looking like a rabbit, badly faded but still intact in shape. Coach Ethan had a daughter when he was alive, and I remembered that she seemed to like rabbits, and the thought made my chest tighten. If zombies truly retained memories from their former lives, then what exactly were they? The living dead, or some new form of existence? Coach Ethan waited for about 5 minutes, and when I did not respond, of course I would not open the window, he began to shuffle away, turning back every few steps, his posture almost melancholic. Day 46. Supplemental objectives. A. Coach Ethan brought a toy suspected to belong to his daughter before death. The memory retention theory is further supported. After writing this line, I decided to take a small risk to verify the secret of the garage, because Mr. Pepper's unusual attention to it, combined with the question mark on the map, meant there had to be something there. Going out during the day was too dangerous, so I needed to wait for the right timing. For example, a rainy day. The zombie observation diary showed that zombie activity clearly decreased on rainy days, and their reactions were slower, possibly because rain interfered with their senses or for some other reason. But either way, it was a consistent pattern. There was no internet for weather forecasts, but I had the wisdom of my ancestors, observing Mr. Pepper's behavior. Buddy. I scratched the cat under the chin. If it's gonna rain tomorrow, give me a meow. Mr. Pepper shot me a disdainful glance, jumped onto the windowsill, and started washing his face. All right, the animal weather forecaster plan failed. The main task of the afternoon was preparing an evacuation pack, because if the garage was dangerous or the looters came back, I had to be ready to leave at any moment. Into the backpack went 2 bottles of water, compressed biscuits, a multifunction knife, and a simple medical kit. And although the phone had no signal, it could still serve as a flashlight and power bank, along with that precious basement survival guide. The katana was too large and inconvenient to carry, so I used a kitchen knife and duct tape to make a simple thigh holster, which looked cool, but chafed my leg when I walked, though it was still better than being unarmed. What do you think? I asked Mr. Pepper as I showed him the gear, and after sniffing the backpack, he walked away disdainfully. A cat with no taste. Toward evening, the sky suddenly darkened, and thunder rolled in the distance, and Mr. Pepper immediately became restless, pacing between the window and the door. It was going to rain. I pressed myself against the window and saw that the zombies were indeed becoming uneasy, Coach Ethan increasing his pacing speed, while High Heels Auntie retreated straight into the pavilion. 10 minutes later, the first raindrop fell, instantly turning into a torrential downpour. I had never welcomed a storm so much. Rain washed over the windows, blurring the view outside, but I could hear the zombies' rasping sounds becoming sparse and sluggish. Perfect. I quickly put on my homemade rain gear, 3 layers of trash bags with foam boards sandwiched in between and taped into a poncho. Hideously ugly, but waterproof and somewhat bite-resistant, with a bicycle helmet coated in bleach as a helmet, disinfecting gloves and oven mitts taped to my sleeves, leaving not an inch of skin exposed. All right, Mr. Pepper. I crouched down and looked into the cat's eyes. I'm going out for a bit. You stay here or come with me. Mr. Pepper looked at me, then at the door, and firmly sat down in front of it, tail wrapped around his paws. Got it. Guarding the house. Good boy. I took a deep breath, checked my equipment one last time, knife strapped to my thigh, backpack tight against my back, rain hood pulled low, then gently unlocked the door. The stairwell was dim, damp, and empty, and for the moment, Coach Ethan had no idea where he had gone to shelter from the rain. I tiptoed upstairs, every step careful for fear of disturbing the neighbors above. And by the time I reached the first-floor lobby, I was already drenched in sweat, the rain gear suffocating like a steamer. The open area from the lobby to the garage was about 20 meters, and in the downpour I could vaguely see several zombie figures moving slowly, as if stuck on slow motion. I crouched low and dashed toward the garage, rain drumming loudly against the poncho, and one zombie turned its head, but failed to see clearly before turning back again. 10 seconds later, I safely reached the garage entrance. The garage was darker and damper than I had imagined, with several dust-covered cars parked inside, some with doors wide open, others smashed together, clearly frozen in the chaos of the apocalypse's arrival. Which car had caught Mr. Pepper's attention? I turned on my phone flashlight and cautiously checked each vehicle, until a black SUV at the very back of the third row caught my eye. Its body was cleaner than the others, as if it had been used recently. When I moved closer to inspect the driver's side, I saw a small scratch carved into the door handle, matching the map's marking exactly. My heart started pounding as I carefully pulled open the door. A sharp beeping alarm suddenly blared, and I fumbled frantically under the steering wheel, ripping out several wires before the sound finally stopped. But it was already too late, because the zombies' rasping noises outside the garage had clearly increased. Damn it. I searched the back seat quickly and found several empty cans and a sleeping bag. And in the storage compartment, there was an atlas with experiment log number 7 written on the title page. The biggest surprise was that the key was still in the ignition, and when I turned it, the dashboard lit up, showing half a tank of fuel, enough to drive at least 200 kilometers. There was no time to celebrate, as zombie footsteps were getting closer. I grabbed the logbook and backpack and was about to leave when I saw a small red light blinking in the corner of the garage in the rearview mirror. It was a camera, and it was still operating. That discovery chilled me more than the zombies, because someone was monitoring this garage, monitoring this car, and the question of whether they could see me right now left no time for thought. 2 zombies had already appeared at the garage entrance, so I slammed the door shut and slipped out the other side, using the cars as cover to circle around to the back of the garage, where there was a small side door leading to the residential greenbelt. The rain became my best cover as I bent low and pushed through the bushes until I reached the back of Building 7. Going upstairs was harder than going down, and every second I feared running into a zombie. But fortunately, the downpour had driven most of them into hiding. By the time I reached the basement door, I was soaked to the bone, the rain gear torn while pushing through the bushes. Mr. Pepper was calling anxiously from inside, and I slipped in quickly, locking 3 bolts behind me before collapsing onto the floor, gasping for air. "We did it, buddy," I said shakily to Mr. Pepper. "We might have a car now." But the bigger problem was who had installed that camera, the looters or something even more dangerous. There was no time to rest, so I immediately checked the spoils, and the so-called experiment log number 7 turned out to be a personal diary belonging to someone named Dr. Jones, with messy handwriting recording scattered observations. Subject number 7 shows astonishing memory retention, not only capable of using tools, but also attempting to protect other test subjects. Minerals in rainwater may temporarily inhibit viral activity. If the theory is correct, subject number 7 may have already developed natural antibodies. Samples must be obtained before military cleanup. On the final page it read, "Garage camera installed. If predictions are correct, subject number 7 will return to the location of his last memory." My hands began to shake, because this explained far too many things. Why Coach Ethan paid special attention to me, why he tried to protect me, and why the looters were interested in my basement. Coach Ethan was subject number 7, and someone might believe that either he or I carried antibodies. Day 46.
Major discovery.
Coach Ethan may be subject number 7 of an experiment. His abnormal behavior linked to viral properties. The garage is under surveillance. A third party may be involved. As I wrote this line, I realized an even more urgent problem. If the rain stopped and the zombies became active again, I had just left wet footprints leading to the basement. "Mr. Pepper," I said seriously to the cat, "we need to build an alarm system." 2 hours later, a crude but effective alarm system was complete, using ropes and empty cans as semi-lock triggers, small bells hanging from the stairwell window, and most importantly, I trained Mr. Pepper to tap the water pipes with his paw when he detected danger, demonstrating a specific rhythm that meant trouble. Mr. Pepper tilted his head, then miraculously reproduced the exact rhythm with his paw. Genius cat. I excitedly tried to hug him, but he nimbly dodged away with an expression that clearly said, "Do not get carried away." Night fell and the rain continued. And I flipped through Dr. Jones' notes, trying to piece together more clues, but an even more basic survival question surfaced. Now that I knew so much, what should I do next? Staying put was too risky. Leaving rashly was just as dangerous, and the SUV was an option, but who knew whether it carried a tracker? I looked out the window, and could vaguely see Coach Ethan's figure in the rain, still standing in his old position and letting the rain wash over him. This neighbor, I once disliked, now a zombie, might hold the most important secret of the apocalypse, while I, Bella, an ordinary citizen who only wanted to hide in a basement and survive, had somehow become the center of this conspiracy. "Tomorrow," I whispered to the sleeping Mr. Pepper. "Tomorrow we have to make a decision." As the sound of rain gradually weakened, I knew the zombies would soon become active again, and no matter what, an era was about to end, and my basement life was nearing its conclusion. The rain drummed against the window like 1,000 small drums, as I pressed my forehead to the glass and looked out at the blurred world beyond. This storm even fiercer than yesterday, as if heaven itself were helping me. Action day. I wrote those 3 words in my notebook and quickly checked my equipment: escape backpack, food, water, medical kit, weapons, experiment log, and version 2.0 of the homemade rain gear. This time, using 5 layers of trash bags with extra padding at key points: helmet, gloves, swimming goggles, modified protective goggles, a kitchen knife strapped to my thigh, and empty cans and alarms hanging from my waist. Mr. Pepper crouched nearby, his golden eyes shining in the dim light, and I squatted down to meet his gaze. "Listen, buddy, we're leaving. You can come with me or stay, but I hope you'll come." Mr. Pepper tilted his head, gave a soft meow, and rubbed his head against my knee, which I took as the cat version, "I'm willing, good kid." I scratched behind his ears and placed the pet carrier I had bought online before the apocalypse, never used, on the floor, and after sniffing it reluctantly, he crawled inside. I took one last look around the basement that had protected me for 47 days, the walls covered with tally marks, zombie graffiti, and the Beansprout Farm, my own Noah's Ark. But now, it was time to disembark. The first step was luring away the zombies, so I connected my phone to a small speaker and set it to play the most dazzling folk style at maximum volume. Probably the only weapon capable of frightening both zombies and living people, and used a claypole to place the speaker on the window awning outside. Once the music started, all the zombies in the complex would swarm toward it like moths to a flame. 3, 2, 1. And the moment I pressed play, the rousing song tore through the rain curtain, "The vast horizon is my love." And the effect was immediate, as nearby zombies turned their heads in unison, letting out excited rasps and moving toward the sound, even Coach Ethan turning from his fixed position and shuffling toward the side of Building 7. "Goodbye, Coach Ethan," I whispered, my throat inexplicably tight. The second step was scent camouflage, and from under the bed I pulled out a treasured item, a jacket soaked in zombie black blood collected during the last looter attack, smelling like rotten burgers mixed with expired milk, but serving as the best disguise because science suggested zombies identified prey mainly by smell, and their own blood could mask human scent. Putting on this biochemical weapon, along with gloves and goggles, I looked like a deranged scientist, but that was still better than looking like lunch. The third step was breaking out. I took a deep breath and gently opened the door, the stairwell empty, except for dried black bloodstains, reminding me of the danger here, while Mr. Pepper shifted uneasily in the backpack, and I patted it to calm him. Going upstairs went more smoothly than expected, and when I reached the first-floor lobby, I paused to observe outside, seeing zombies clustering beneath the music source in the downpour, like frenzied fans, some already forming human pyramids trying to reach the speaker. Perfect. I lowered my body and sprinted out of the lobby, moving along the bushes toward the garage, rain striking my face like countless needles, but also reducing visibility to my advantage. 20 meters, 15, 10. A figure suddenly lunged from the side, and I instinctively drew the knife, only to stop at the last second when I recognized High Heels Auntie, who tilted her head and looked at me with confusion on her decaying face before walking away. The disguise worked. Suppressing the urge to cheer, I continued forward, and by the time I reached the garage, I was soaked through, though adrenaline kept me from feeling cold. The black SUV was still in its old spot, and I quickly checked underneath and in the trunk, finding no bombs or trackers, at least to the naked eye, with the key still in the ignition. I opened the door, placed Mr. Pepper's carrier on the passenger seat, slid into the driver's seat myself, and felt something under me. A small USB drive taped into the seat seam. There was no time to examine it, so I stuffed it into my pocket, turned the key, and the engine's roar exploded through the quiet garage like a bomb as I immediately shifted gears and floored the accelerator. The SUV bursting forward, while in the rearview mirror, several zombies were already turning their heads. Noticing the movement, they began to give chase. Sorry about that, fans. I yanked the steering wheel hard, and the car crushed over the speed bump and burst out of the garage, the wipers thrashing wildly as I could barely make out the road ahead. At the community exit, 2 zombies were wandering in confusion. I gritted my teeth and accelerated, sending them flying as they left 2 streaks of black blood across the windshield. I kept repeating, sorry, mechanically, while switching on the wipers to clean the glass. Once out of the complex, the streets were worse than I had imagined. Abandoned vehicles lay scattered at all angles, some still smoking. Bodies, some of them fresh, were strewn everywhere, and several staggering figures wandered in the rain. According to the plan, I should have driven straight out of the city toward the suburbs, but the flashing red dot on the map made me hesitate. Dr. Jones's laboratory was only 3 kilometers away, and the USB drive might contain answers. No, Bella, I told myself. Rule number 1, don't take risks. At that moment, Mr. Pepper suddenly wriggled out of the backpack, his fur bristling as he hissed and pointed his paw toward the northwest. What is it? Boom! A loud explosion rang out as the car suddenly tilted. The right front tire had blown. I fought desperately to control the steering wheel as the car skidded and slammed into a streetlight, the airbag detonating with a bang and stars bursting in my vision. I struggled to undo my seatbelt while Mr. Pepper nimbly jumped into the back seat. The windshield shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, yet I could still see 4 armed figures running toward us from the street corner. Not zombies. Living people, and well-equipped. Whether looters' accomplices or something worse, or Dr. Jones's people, there was no time to think. I grabbed the backpack and Mr. Pepper, kicked the car door open and rolled out, the blowout having happened right at the mouth of an alley. I staggered into it as shouts and gunfire erupted behind me. Find cover. Clutching Mr. Pepper, I slipped into a half-open rolling shutter that looked like a hardware store. Pitch dark inside and filled with dust and the smell of engine oil, but at least temporarily safe. Mr. Pepper jumped from my arms, ears pricked in alert, while I held my breath and listened to the sounds outside. Split up. He can't have gone far. The doctor wants him alive. Remember. So it really was them. But why were they so obsessed with me? Just because I had contact with Coach Ethan. The back door of the hardware store led to a rear alley, and I moved lightly, Mr. Pepper tied at my heels. At the end of the alley was a fork, the left leading to the main road, 2 exposed, the right into a maze of residential blocks, where it was easy to get lost. As I hesitated, Mr. Pepper suddenly bit my pant leg and dragged me toward a 3rd direction, a sewer entrance with the lid half open. Smart cat. I kissed him quickly and flipped the cover open, a wave of stench hitting me full in the face. But it was still better than bullets. Before climbing down, I took one last look at the alley entrance and saw a familiar figure standing there, Coach Ethan, soaked to the skin, his eyes glinting strangely in the rain as he stared straight at me, then unexpectedly turning around and walking toward the direction the pursuers had come from. No, I reached out instinctively, but reason held me back. The sewer lid clanged shut above my head, and darkness swallowed everything. The next 6 hours were a nightmare trek through darkness, stench, rats, and the occasional hoarse zombie chuckle, because there were actually zombies down there too. Mr. Pepper walked ahead like a little guardian, stopping from time to time to wait for me. At last, a rusty ladder led up to the surface, and I carefully pushed the cover open to find that we had reached an abandoned construction site at the urban fringe. The rain had stopped, and the setting sun edged the clouds with gold. Beautiful, beyond belief. We had made it. I collapsed onto the grass, trembling hands stroking Mr. Pepper's head as he rubbed against me. Then suddenly, pricked his ears in alert. I immediately grabbed the knife, but it wasn't an enemy. It was a filthy little dog, with ribs clearly visible, staring at us timidly. Instinct told me not to get involved. Rule number 1, don't play the saint. But looking into his wet eyes, I thought of Mr. Pepper pleading outside my window on that rainy night. All right, I sighed, tossing a small piece of biscuit from my backpack. But you have to follow on your own. I'm not carrying you. The little dog devoured the biscuit and really did follow us. And so a strange team was formed. A grime-covered girl, a proud orange cat, and a tail-wagging little dog. 3 months later, the suburban farm was far more spacious than the basement. Solar panels provided power. Well water could be drunk after filtration. The vegetable garden and chicken coop supplied stable food. And I even managed to get my hands on a diesel generator, occasionally letting me access the internet. Welcome back to the End of the World Solo Survival Guide. I smiled at the camera, Mr. Pepper kneeling on my shoulder, while the little dog, now named Lucky, dozed at my feet. The live stream display showed 237 viewers, a post-apocalyptic internet miracle. My survival tip videos becoming scarce resources that could be exchanged for all kinds of supplies and information. Off camera, a string of bells hung on the farm fence, the upgraded alarm system, and in the corner a homemade weather vane spun in the wind with a sound symbol painted on it. The weather forecast still relying on Mr. Pepper, though now he had an assistant, as Lucky could smell zombies from half a mile away. After the stream ended, I climbed to the highest point of the farm and looked toward the city through binoculars. A place still full of danger, but also hiding unresolved mysteries. What became of Coach Ethan? What was Dr. Jones's true experimental goal? What were the natural antibodies mentioned in the USB drive that was later cracked? Maybe one day I would go back to look for answers, but not today. Today the sunlight was perfect. The vegetable patch needed weeding. Mr. Pepper and Lucky were chasing butterflies. And Chapter 28 of my 3 No Principles survival guide was still unfinished. From basement to farm, from alone to having a cat and a dog, from barely scraping by to helping others, occasionally, very cautiously, this was probably evolution in the apocalypse. Hey guys, I called out to the frolicking cat and dog. What do you want for dinner? Chicken or fish? Mr. Pepper immediately ran over and rubbed against my leg, indicating he wanted both, while Lucky spun excitedly in circles, drool dripping onto my shoes. I laughed and rubbed their heads. The apocalypse was awful, but at least I was no longer alone.